So, I saw Shin Godzilla last month, and I absolutely loved it. I think it may be one of the most effective movie remakes of all time, and here I'll explain why I think that. A lot of people hate movie remakes. I don't exactly hate them. My biggest problem with them is that if a movie has been remade with the same title, chances are that's what's going to come up when you try to Google it. It's also annoying when you're talking about a movie and people assume you mean its remake. No, I wasn't talking about the 2011 The Thing. Why would I ever talk about the 2011 The Thing? However, I think updating a movie can be worth it if and only if it's done right. That means there needs to be a reason to remake the movie. Take, for example, the Psycho remake, the perfect example of a remake that has no reason to exist. It's exactly like the original, shot for shot the same. The only difference is they didn't use Hershey's chocolate sauce's blood in the shower scene. The movie's in color now, so they had to use strawberry sauce. Another example, King Kong. King Kong had two remakes, and they both served the purpose of retelling the story with updated special effects. And since King Kong is one of the biggest pioneers of special effects movies, remaking it with whatever the latest in effects have to offer makes sense. I actually wrote and recorded a whole section of this video where I said the '76 remake didn't need to exist, but once I went to find footage of it, I basically went, whoa, these effects still look pretty fantastic. I figured it'd be just as dated as the stop motion, which I also love, but you know, you get my point. But I actually think the '76 movie's Kong looks more like a living creature than the 2005 one did. It blinks, it has expression. I love animatronics so much. Sorry, I'm digressing a lot. I've been in a King Kong mood lately since I just saw Mighty Joe Young for the first time, and because the new King Kong movie, Skull Island, looks like it has the right ideas on how to try new things while keeping the original very much at heart. I'll probably make some other King Kong videos since I have so much to say, but for now I'll get to the point and talk about Shin Godzilla. But before I do, I should point out that I'm a pretty big Godzilla fan. I'll try to keep this video as accessible as possible to everyone else, but you know, just be warned. Believe it or not, this is actually the first ever Godzilla remake. What about the TriStar one? What the hell is a TriStar? All the other movies are either sequels to the original or to each other, with the exception of All Monsters Attack, which took place in a child's dreams.
Godzilla says that I should learn to fight my own battles, you know.
Because it was the 70s and your parents were doing LSD. Anyway, tonally, Shin Godzilla is very much like the original. The music lifted straight from the first movie and the horrifying-looking new incarnation of the monster cement its connection to its predecessor. But in terms of details, the movie is drastically different. It's interesting because 2014's Godzilla felt like the same Godzilla character we know, but in a movie with an entirely different tone. Shin Godzilla, on the other hand, feels like the exact same tone as the original, but the Godzilla is very different. I'm getting into spoilers here, so be warned if you haven't seen Shin Godzilla yet. So Godzilla is obviously much more scary looking than usual, and this is only really the third time they've succeeded at making him menacing and scary after the original in GMK. He has a bunch of new abilities, including his power to evolve at will. Pokemon Gojira! I'm topical. Most people have been calling this a reboot rather than a remake. I don't really care about the terminology, but I consider this a remake because it has the same general premise as the original and redoes some of the story beats. Whether you should actually consider this the first Godzilla remake depends on a lot of technicalities that are probably subjective. But it's my life, so if I want to call this the first Godzilla remake, then you can't stop me. So why is this such a great way to remake Godzilla? Well, I see it as the overall tone and premise of the original but set now, and with the necessary adjustments that go along with that. It really knows how to update the story, with Godzilla being more powerful to account for advances in military technology, as well as commentary on the current Japanese government, and more imagery from Japanese disasters like firebombing. You should definitely watch Gaijin Goombah's video on the movie if you'd like to know more about the Japanese culture behind the movie's choices. The movie takes the problem that the original movie wanted to solve and tried to firstly address what has changed since then and then come up with a new solution, which is what remakes should be doing. That's what Rise of the Planet of the Apes did, and I really like that movie too. Some movies just modernize the original without really changing very much, which is when they serve pretty much no purpose unless you're the kind of person who refuses to watch any movie that either isn't in English or came out before 2000. Wait, Memento? They're remaking Memento? Seriously? So Shin Godzilla nails the tone, updates the message, and brings plenty of originality with it. But being a good remake doesn't mean very much if it's not a good movie, and Shin Godzilla is a very good movie. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna rave for a bit. Wait, isn't that... I'm stealing this format from Sequelitis, aren't I?
Man, I just like Mega Man X. I mean, I'm serious. This is like my favorite game. So I'm just gonna gush right now, okay? I'm just gonna gush.
If I point out that I stole it from Sequelitis, does that redeem me or whatever? Because I still want to rave about this.
Wow, f***ing Igoraptor much?
Isn't it cool how Godzilla breathes fire for the first time in this movie? He's always incorrectly shown as breathing fire in posters and comics, and that's what this reminded me of. Wasn't the train scene fantastic? I had the stupidest grin on my face when that classic ba 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 kicked in. And you're allowed to enjoy it given the context. You're not just cheering for the music, you're cheering for Japan's counterattack. Wasn't it great when Godzilla evolved into his third form and you're like, oh thank God the CG is good from now on. And wasn't that later CG so good? It might have even been better than Godzilla 2014. I was certainly more convinced that Godzilla was actually there. And part of that was because the model work was so amazing. Even if they never use a suit in a Godzilla movie again, I hope they keep using model sets because they looked so real. Shin Godzilla is clever, it's scary, it's funny, but most importantly, it's simultaneously so undeniably Godzilla while being something entirely unlike any movie I've seen. I've been careful not to rush into praising this movie because with Godzilla 2014 I loved it coming out of the theater and slowly calmed down. But I didn't have nearly as many good things to say about that movie. I still like it, but all I can really say is Godzilla looks cool, and when he shot his atomic breath I had what my brother described as a nerdgasm. Everything else was mediocre. Not bad, just mediocre. Shin Godzilla is anything but mediocre. It's flawed, sure, but not because it's bland or safe. One more thing before I end this video. Godzilla movies don't always have great human stories. That probably sounds a bit weird if you're not a Godzilla fan, but it's a valid point. If you like Godzilla movies, it's worth watching ones with bad plots for the effects and set pieces. But for me, there were 10 Godzilla movies with memorable and, in my opinion, good or at least entertaining human stories. And since the human stories form the majority of the movies in almost every case, these are basically my 10 favorite Godzilla movies. They were Gojira, Godzilla Raise Again, Godzilla vs. King Kong, Godzilla vs. Gaijin, Terror of Mechagodzilla, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, Godzilla vs. Disutoya! GMK, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla Final Wars. I say there were 10 because Shin Godzilla is now part of that list. And since I don't know how to end this, here's how my Shin Godzilla theater experience ended when I went to see it with my friend Jason.
Hey guys, what's up?
Get out.
What the fuck?